Good morning, members. Welcome to the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee on Tuesday the 13th of February 2024. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for the Council website. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, obviously you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it's intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be taken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting, so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. Claire, could you please provide the Cedric and any apologies?
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Chair. Currently got 12 members present, 3 members present in the Council Hall, being yourself and Vice Chair and Councillor Scobie, 9 members present on Teams, being Councillors Beretti, Brodie, Ferguson, Giusti, Hagman, Johnston, Jordan, Marsh and McGregor. 3 members currently not present, being Councillors Ingalls, McCammon and Stevenson. And I should also say that since the papers have been issued, John Young has been replaced by Andy Ferguson. Thank you.
Thanks. I think the Vice Chair is indicating that Councillor Stevenson's apologies for today. Okay, and just as Chair, I'll approve members' remote participation. Do any members have a declaration of interest or a statement of connection they wish to make? Okay, so if we move on to the minute of the previous meeting of 3rd of November 2023, I think it says approve in the published report, but it should actually say note. So can we agree to note the minutes of the meeting held on 3rd of November 23? Thank you. Item 4 is the minute of the previous meeting on 28th of November 2023, and in this case it is correct, so can we approve those minutes for that meeting? Thank you. Item 5 is the Dumfries and Galloway Council's Risk Management Arrangements, report by Head of Governance and Assurance. And we have Mark Thompson here to assist members with any questions. Mark, is there anything you'd like to add to the report before I open up to members?
Thanks, Chair, and good morning, everybody. I don't think there's much to add to the Chair, out with highlighting it is an annual update on the operation of the Council's risk management arrangements. It gives a brief overview of the process, provides confirmation that as of today we'll have completed a full cycle of scrutiny of the Council's corporate risks, and provides details of what those risks are, as well as some information with regards to some high-level benchmarking.
Thanks, Mark. Councillor Dryborough.
Sorry, I don't want to give any add to the report, but I'm actually glad that we've seen that the workforce is a risk to the council now, especially where right across the public sector that trying to get people into places is quite difficult, and we're all sort of fishing in the same pool of people. I'm just wondering, as part of that council-wide risks register, I know that there has been things happening like shows that show what's available in the council. Are there any programmes that's going to continue over the next year or so?
Thanks, Councillor Dryborough. Is that specific to workforce or just in terms of the...
Yeah, just in terms of workforce.
All right, okay. Well, perhaps my colleague James McLeod, when he present item 6, will be able to cover that in a bit more detail for you.
Yeah, so if that's okay, James McDowell, if you want to come in on that.
Yeah, happy to through yourself, Chair. Absolutely. I think those programmes that you're talking about, Archie, will continue as we move forward. I think in various fronts, and probably it's probably part of the next agenda item, but round about those programmes of career events, with schools. We've been at a number over the last few months, pre-Christmas, Wallace Hall, Dalbeattie, Dumfries, the Bridge as well. So about that pipeline, young people coming into the organisation, so engaging with those. We're at career events themselves, open door events at the Bridge through our partners, DYW and DWP. So absolutely that will continue as we move forward. And I think the partnership we have with our NHS colleagues as well is something that will develop further. And the college, we're keen to engage with the college as well. So thank you.
Thank you. We now have Councillor Malcolm Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's actually on the benchmarking, and from what I've just heard, we're actually planning to do a bit more high level or more involved benchmarking. And 4.7, they come out with risks that we've highlighted that other councils have potentially highlighted. Is there any risks that other councils have highlighted that we've not?
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. Yes, there will be other risks, and what I've included as part of this report is where the significant proportion of local authorities have these risks, but there are others where there are perhaps on a council basis alone they have a risk. We indeed have one of those risks in terms of layering of impacts, but other councils, depending on what challenges they particularly face, will have a risk specific to that. So you will always, across the board, have risks that are corporate risks within a local authority, but they represent particular circumstances of that local authority. But if we go into more detail with further benchmarking, we can probably help articulate that a bit better for you and help that understanding.
You want to come back in, Councillor Johnson?
Just to say thank you. I think it would be information that would be quite useful for us to have.
Yeah, no, it'd certainly be interesting to know what we don't consider a risk that others do, and just maybe get a bit of intelligence to support what we already know that we have in common. So we now have Councillor Emma Jordan. I think your hand was up.
Thank you very much, Chair. Actually, I decided that my question is probably more appropriate for the next item, workforce, so I withdrew. Thank you.
That's fine, not to worry. Councillor Barretti.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question is invariably on the climate change aspect. The register or the risk register, how wide is it? And are we talking about the whole council estate, not just buildings, but are we talking about all the staff being aware of what potentially means climate risk? Because there's an awful lot of mitigation measures you could use, whether physically or educationally. What does it look like?
Thanks, Councillor Barretti. In terms of the detail of that, I'm perhaps not best placed to provide comment, and the risk lead would be best placed. But I am aware that there is a corporate climate change group, and it is something that is discussed across all levels within the council, both in terms of our carbon targets, but also the impacts and implications of severe weather in terms of how that impacts on services through our business continuity arrangements or indeed our resilience arrangements as well. So there is a broad spectrum of activity linked to that. But again, for something in more detail, perhaps that can be covered when the climate change risk is next scrutinised at committee, which will be at some point later this year.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Councillor Breton, is that okay? We'll be going into that in more detail
Yeah,
next year.
that's fine, Chair. That will do for a moment.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions on this report. So if we go to the recommendations, we've been asked to note the work that's been carried out during 2023 by the Council's Risk Management Group. Are we happy to note? Thank you. Agree the adequacy of risk management practices as per delegations to the committee. Are we happy to agree? Thank you. And note the addition of a new risk CW10 workforce presented for consideration. That should actually say item 6, I think, in the agenda. So if we just correct that, but if we can note the addition of that as well. Happy to do so? Thank you. So that takes us on to item 6. And again, Mark Thompson and James McDowell are here to assist with any questions on workforce. So I don't know, again, if you want to, either of you want to add anything to the report first.
Thanks, Chair. Just to highlight that this is a new risk, a new addition to the corporate risk register, and I think evidences the fact that this is an ongoing process of continuing to analyse risk and add or remove as required in there as well. But any detailed questions certainly could be fielded through my colleague.
I think probably it might be best served if we agree to take the presentation first. So if we're happy to do so, members, at 2.1, just agree to receive the presentation. Okay, thank you.
There we go. I'll hopefully just sort of run through this to kind of set the scene, and then happy to take questions at the end. So again, you know, it's clearly pointing out there it's following our due process with regards to why it is a strategic risk, and I think there's no sort of debate there with regards to that as we move forward. It is about our people, our workforce. You know, they are one of the most important elements of us as an organisation, and hence the reason why it's a strategic risk. Without that appropriate staff in place, we would be unable to deliver on our council plan priorities and projects. There are many factors, both internally and more importantly externally, that sort of can become barriers, I suppose, to us being able to recruit relevant staff, particularly in some areas, and it is about that, as it highlights here, the cost of living, the cost of housing, travel time from centres of population, and you know, the region is a place to live and move to a more agile working across society. So these are elements that you know, obviously we take account of. So the consequences themselves, as we kind of touch through these, are good to see up there in the screen, as it were. So it is about staff shortages in particular areas, and it is about then delivering those services either fully or partially. You know, and it's failure to deliver projects in time, and the financial impacts due to that, and the loss of opportunities for our council to bid for additional funding. So that's some elements of it. If we're going to continue, there's reputational damage, increase of complaints, you know, through that service delivery failure, negative impact on the existing workforce, and what that can do. If part of their team is short, then absolutely that kind of an impact. And just that whole career advancement, development. Again, it's about providing opportunities, and that's what we're here to do. And at a service level, it may require prioritising work and changes to working practices as we move forward. And then where staff recruitment has the potential to cause problems, it's about those interventions, you know, one council approach to try and rectify those as we move forward. So a wee bit about the existing controls that we currently have. So our people strategy that was agreed at E&R committee in November 2021 has 6 outcomes that we aim to achieve during the duration of that strategy. And you know, it's from 1 down to 6 there. They're clear about what we try to do, and that can support trying to mitigate some of the elements of this risk as we move forward. So there is an action plan that goes to E&R committee on an annual basis for scrutiny. So that's something that happens as well. So again, controls, existing controls, internal controls continued. Again, we do have recruitment processes, you know, virtual interview, and that's something obviously piggybacking in the back of the pandemic and COVID, where we've been able to do that. Kickstart and now Placement Plus is obviously something that is ongoing as we speak. The Placement Plus element of it. And you know, apprenticeship programs, it's something again that we have small pockets of, if I'm being honest, but we don't have a dedicated programme of apprentices, which we had previously. So employment fairs, we touched on that in the last bit there. We continue to engage and be present at employment fairs right throughout the region, both here and over in the west. Relocation packages are there and can be used. There is the incentivisation scheme as part of our T's and C's there. Social media, again, we use that through the best part that we can, and just raising awareness of wider benefits in terms and conditions. You know, it's about selling our organisation through those T's and C's. Our own staff itself, we do have induction programmes, training and development and leadership programmes, and there's to retain staff. We have a variety of interventions there that support to try and retain our current staff. You know, and I think grow your own is something that we'll continue to do. So sort of planned actions. People strategy, I mentioned that as part of even the council plan deliverables, annual deliverables. There's a recruitment review in there as part of that. So that is a significant piece of work that looks at every aspect from marketing right through to process and right through to the sort of governance element of it, just to, you know, for vacancy management and such like. So quite a big review happening there. Again, the sort of longer term external funding available with regards to some of our projects, some of our fixed term posts. So we have that in place. And then development of job families, again, that would then allow us to link that to career pathways. You know, I think if we have a clear direction of what those families are, it allows us then to have that career pathway in place that's visible and people can understand as we kind of move forward. So again, local resources for qualifications. Again, we're keen, and we've started that with the local college, Dumfries and Galloway College, about what they can offer us through a partnership with regards to some of the qualifications and some of the learning that's there, both here in Dumfries and in Stranraer. So again, we're keen to continue to do that as we move forward. The detailed workforce plans. So again, there is a council workforce plan. We'll go to E&R committee 19th of March, and contained within that there'll be service people plans, which provides a detail of what the service will do going forward with regards to action, but also, you know, identify the gaps as we move forward. But we've worked over the last 6 months or so with services, some services to really work through those people plans and test them. So they're in a good place, but as I say, they're going to E&R committee on the 19th of March to be agreed and to move forward with them. Again, marketing, I touched on that with the recruitment review. There's something about how we market our brand, as it were. You know, our council, it's a great organisation to work for, and you know, we should continue to say that and do lots more with that. People survey, again, we did that June last year. The results came out just before Christmas, December. So we're currently working up an action plan through engagement. And that will go to E&R committee 19th of March again. So there's some valuable information in there that we can use to really move forward with regards to retaining and recruiting staff. A coaching approach, this is something we're keen to make sure happens within the organisation as a natural occurrence, where we do sort of constantly learn and develop through that coaching mentality, and I think that will support us as we move forward. And again, understand what future jobs, posts will be. I think that's it. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So I've got a number of questions. So I think, Emma, you got in exceptionally early, so we'll take you first if that's okay. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for that report. That's great, and it looks like Dumfries and Galloway Council are doing an awful lot to try and deal with the staffing issues that we may face, and we do face. My question, well, I've got two actually. I just want to check in about PDPs and appraisals to establish if they are being done as they should be for all staff. And I believe that that was a question that went to the E&R committee, and I believe Lorna was going to be looking into that. So perhaps she's already looking into that. Maybe she could feed back to us. But my other question, really, you sort of answered, but it was just about encouraging our staff we already have to develop, if they wish to have those opportunities. Obviously, you've touched on quite a few points there. Just really want to make sure that, this is from the top and going right throughout the organisation, that all managers have that ethos, that they're going to be coaching staff and encouraging them if they wish to progress, then they've got the support, and making sure that that message is getting to all of our staff, because we do have a number of staff that, although they might have email addresses, don't really have access to get on to read their emails. So how are we getting that message to those staff? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there's a couple of points in there, James, but if you're happy to pick that up.
Yeah, happy to do so. Thank you for the questions. So the PDR appraisal, absolutely, I can provide a bit of an update on that. So we have been working towards a sort of digital appraisal. So again, it's utilising our current system, iTrent, with regards to that, and what it's called is check-ins. So it moves from just being a manager-led process to being a two-way with regards to the check-in. So it's either manager-led or employee-led, and I think that will provide that continuous conversation to happen throughout the year, not just the one-off event that we currently have. It'll incorporate other meetings that take place, whether it's a one-to-one, whether it's an audit inspection, whatever that is, it will allow for that check-in to take place and be captured as well, which is more important, I think. So the reporting aspect will be an automated process. It will no longer be down to the manager or line manager to upload into iTrent. It'll happen naturally because of the system. Within the check-ins itself, there's some clear areas there that we're looking to roll out. Wellbeing being one, objectives, development, again, so these are all very much top priority with regards to that conversation that should be happening on a regular basis, but not dictating it has to happen every month, every week. It's the natural conversations that we know do exist within the organisation, but it's about capturing those and making sure we have a clear direction as we kind of move forward with that. Hopefully that sort of answers the PDR one. We're currently, just to highlight, we're currently piloting that with services, and that will be rolled out in April of this year. That's what we're looking at with regards to that. So absolutely, grow your own development is something we're absolutely committed to as an organisation, and it sort of links into the new platform we've gone live with in January, My Learning. So My Learning will have a variety of learning materials on there for every member of this organisation to be able to use. It's currently open and going through user testing as we speak. So with over 150 staff user testing the system. And its current setup is that you can go on through single sign-on, or you can go through manual sign-on. So, me personally, I completed some courses one night using my own phone onto the system. So it's there, it's accessible, and it's something that again will roll out. I think we're not naive to think that it'll just switch on and every single member of the organisation will be able to use it. There's a good bit of upskilling, working with services to make sure that the best approach for that service is where we'll get the best return on the value and the investment. But again, grow your own is something through My Learning. We have our leadership framework, leadership development framework again, that is something that's in draft, and it's going to come out in the next few weeks with regards to what our expectation is with leadership, the various levels in there, and also our 2 leadership events that we hold every year. So again, I'm hoping that sort of sets the scene of the direction as we kind of move forward.
Thank you. Emma, do you want to come back quickly before we go on to other members?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. So thank you very much for your response. And I just want to make sure that we are making sure those staff that don't have access to the digital channels, computers, tablets are being reached as well. I know this is going to be a pilot, but I'm just worried about those people, you know, our cleaning staff in schools and our facilities, our kitchen staff, our refuse staff. Obviously, I just want to make sure that everybody gets the same opportunities and access. But thank you.
Okay, James.
Absolutely, through yourself, Chair, can absolutely guarantee that we're engaging with facility services, if we use that as an example, on how best to roll this out right through the organisation. I think for me as well, the Active Directory, as they call it, so every member of staff we want to go into that Active Directory, so they have those email addresses that you're talking about, so that connectivity is there and the ability as we move forward. But as I say, the My Learning system has a manual login as we speak, so it's open there for staff.
Thank you. So next, I think we have Councillor Andy Ferguson.
Actually, I think Malcolm, unless Malcolm was the last item.
Sorry?
That was the last.
Oh, I see. Okay, beg your pardon.
So, was it the last one? Yeah, was it me?
Sorry, Councillor Andy Ferguson. Sorry, I thought I've misspoke. Apologies.
Okay, thanks very much. Just a couple of things I'm picking up, because is it a fair assumption to make this is just the start of a journey with this particular risk, and it'll develop as we go through time and everything else? Can you take that as a given? My only question, really, a couple of questions on it, are the legal risk. If you look at part 6 on page 22, it says there's no legal risk here. Yet when you go to the workforce risk on the appendix 2, page 35, it's got the impact potential in compliance with statutory duties. There could be a significant reputational damage. So are we dealing with that just now? Because I can understand what this is about, because this is about the positivity around the workforce. But there are occasions when there is a negative impact, and how are we dealing with that? Does that make sense, Jamie? Where I'm coming from?
James, sorry.
Either's good. Thanks, Chair. So, absolutely, I think it's a good point you've raised there, Councillor Ferguson, and I think the aspect of our workforce comes into for me with regards to their commitment and how they move forward with their daily duties. If we put it that way, there's a massive commitment from our workforce to come in and do a great job every day, and I think that helps with regards to that risk that you talk about, because they do come in to do a good job every day. I think it's something through our, what I didn't mention as well that will come to you in our committee in March is the council workforce plan, and I think that's something that has that aspect within it. I think there's a lot of information that will be within that workforce plan, and we'll be able to again utilise that as we move forward. But I think it's something that I know is on our radar as we move forward. Hopefully that's answered some of your question, Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, James. So I think there maybe is something about if we're aware of a set of risks, how does that influence how we design deliverable and sustainable services, knowing that there might be an issue James has said there?
Yeah, thank you. And I think Councillor Ferguson kind of made the point, which I think we'll take that on board in terms of the report itself. Maybe in hindsight we could have inserted a word in to say that any legal risks are attached to the actual risk itself rather than the report. So that's to address the first point. In terms of the risk itself, you'll see there in terms of that Appendix 2 and why is it a strategic risk, and the risk statement in particular. And the main kind of risk around it is that inability to deliver the services. And in essence, the way we saw it within the risk management group in particular is twofold. So on the one hand is the capacity of our current staff to deliver the service, but also on the other hand that kind of ability to recruit and to bring in more workforce. So we've got those two elements of it. The focus isn't so much on the employee itself, which obviously brings employment law and other things into place, and that's already, you know, an ongoing managed risk. This is more about that capacity element of it, both in terms of what we currently have and what we seek to recruit and bring in order to deliver those services. So this plays very much into that kind of service failure that we also have within the council-wide risk register, as well as playing into the hands of the layering of demands that will come through either changes in legislation or extra work or projects that we may have, and therefore those risks will probably address more, I think, what Councillor Ferguson's hinting at, which is particular risks around that ability of staff and employment law or other legal issues that may arise through that.
Thanks, Vlad. Councillor Ferguson, are you content with that answer for now?
Yes, I have. Just one last comment, if I could, please, Chair. Looking at the risk matrices, the current risk matrix and the target risk matrix, it's very clear that it's seen as a major risk because it's right in the red. Okay, it's up in the top right, almost as high a risk as you can get. And I know that we'll work towards getting towards the target risk, but the target risk is only just in the amber. You know, it's I would have liked to have seen that being a wee bit more. What's the word I'm looking for here? I suppose, yeah, you get my drift, Stephen. It seems a wee bit an underestimate of where we could really get to if we really tried. That's my point.
No, thanks, Councillor Ferguson. It's maybe about calibrating our ambition, perhaps, about what's achievable. So, but Vlad, do you want to come in on that one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I think it's a really valid question, and we've had similar questions, as you might recall, in regards to some of the other risks that we've got, in particular cyber security. And this is one that's obviously very much scrutinised and teased out in terms of a risk management group, and thereafter SLT and CMT, and we look at that target risk. What we want the target risk to be is realistic, and although we absolutely agree with Councillor Ferguson's sentiment that we would like to get that much lower, we also have to be realistic in terms of that recruitment piece and ability to resolve the workforce issues. And you only have to look across the whole of the public sector in Scotland, not just the public but also private sector, in terms of their ability to resolve this is probably not that high. And as a result, we are looking at our target risks being realistic in what we think we can achieve. And I think we can mitigate it, but we can't resolve it. And that's probably why it's sitting at that rating.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Vice Chair, Councillor Drybredt.
Thanks, Chair. And it's actually about, the public awareness of what we do as a council more than anything else, because I think it's important that, if you ask people what does your council do, they say empty bins and fill in potholes, but they do that badly. But the public perception of what the council actually does is unbelievably bad. And I include MPs and MSPs in this. They don't know what we actually do. So we've got a structure in place covering a whole range of things that we do as a council. And it's making sure that people are aware of what we actually do. And I'll give you a for instance. When we used to have 6 departments, I did a presentation to Gretna and Rigg Community Council, and there was a council employee there from community department, and I showed them all the things that we did as a council, all the legal stuff and all the nice to do's and all that sort of stuff. And even she said, I didn't realise we did that much. So it's about how do we advertise, telling people this is what our staff actually do. You know, here's a range of things that our staff cover, and I understand it's important to make sure that our employees are aware of what they do and ensure they're part of the, as you said, James, the one council. But there's a perception out there that we don't do an awful lot, when in actual fact, legally and the nice to do's, we do a hell of a lot, and we have to adjust our budgets accordingly to do that, and that includes paying our staff. So what sort of things are we doing? Because there is a perception risk there that if we don't have the staff in place to do this, that maybe cause us some problems. So is that, I mean, obviously there's a lot in there, but presumably this might become part of the report that goes to ENR in terms of workforce, or is that your intention?
Through yourself, Chair, absolutely. That council workforce plan that will go to ENR committee. I think some practical examples of what we're doing is probably it's branding up, inspire our future workforce. So what we've done, I touched on them earlier, the career events. So we were at Dalbeattie last week, I think it was. So the parents and S4, S5, S6s were along there, and it's even just the practical element of we've got pop-ups that actually have job, accountancy, lawyers, it's social workers. It's absolutely, it's saying, what we do, not just what they think we do, and absolutely, and I think we need to do more of that. I was talking to a parent last week, and it was about accountancy. She wanted to be an accountant, and I was like, well, there's an avenue here. Absolutely, there's a pathway. Go direct to university. Absolutely. But there's a in-work learning through us as an organisation where you can still become the accountant. However, it's a different pathway, and you probably wouldn't have the student debt at the end of it, but we'll not go into that. But, so there's different pathways, and I think it is about us collectively, and I mean collectively, if we're saying one council, collectively, we're out there, we're saying the same messages, that there's a large number of opportunities within this organisation that make, that allows you to stay within Dumfries and Galloway as well. And I think that's the message, and I think the pipeline, as we talk about, where young people is absolutely the a clear way to do that. However, we've got other avenues, and even area committees, and we've got every opportunity where we engage with people, and it's about that clear message that we're open for business, basically. So hopefully that gives some practical examples.
And are you content with that? I mean, I think Councillor Driver was talking about even despite that, there's maybe a public perception, and is there anything additional we could do to address that? Maybe bring Vlad in for that, is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. And I think in your presentation, on James's presentation, I think we may have some of the answers. One of them is that kind of branding and PR element of it, which I think is bang on in terms of what Councillor Driver's mentioning, and the need for the community to understand what we do, which is much wider than a select few of the services that we are probably more evident and obvious to the community. Just from in terms of a personal experience and teaching the next set of lawyers coming through, that's one thing that I always push for. And actually, the first question I ask the students is, what do you think I do? So in terms of the answers, and I think they miss a lot of what actually local authorities and public bodies do, and absolutely it's about getting that message out there through various levels, and that comms and PR and branding of the council, but that will be done through various different routes.
Okay. Thank you. So Councillor Scobie.
Just maybe to add to what Vlad's saying and what Archie has raised, with the telephone calls I receive and the inbox that I've got, then the council does everything. Or if we don't do everything, we get the blame for everything. So we do. So I think there is an issue there in terms of what our responsibilities actually are. So I don't want to make light of that. I'm looking at this report and maybe building on what Andy was saying, and indeed your response, Vlad, in terms of legal requirement and indeed moral obligation. And I think it refers to it in Appendix 2. I'm not sure of that, the actual page number. Page 36, I think, 35, sorry. The possible consequences for the council and the communities of Dumfries and Galloway depend on where potential staff shortage are most acute, but include failure to deliver services statutory or otherwise, hence my reference to legal and moral obligation, or potential even partially. And I'm looking at this in terms of examples, and we've got 3,000 plus, and I think it's on the increase of unmet need in care provision. And while that's a health and social care partnership, we've got responsibility in terms of adult services through social work. And there's a moral obligation there to deliver that. But the real issue is staff shortage and recruitment and everything else. And we've asked for a report on that in terms of what is the risk to the council in not delivering that. And I look again at the presentation that James made, particularly to page 28, reputational damage and increase in complaints that can arise from the failure to deliver. And at a service level, this may require prioritising work and changes to working practices, or a need to adapt or diminish operational models. And again, it comes back to the question, what do we do as a council? And where we do have a responsibility, that we do it to the best of our ability. So in that respect, it's about, where is the risk? And do we actually hone in? And I've got another one, and I'm pleased to see that, in education, for instance, and it is an item on the agenda that I'll maybe refer to in this one, in terms of our legal obligation or legal requirement to deliver for additional support needs. And it shouldn't be, under budget constraint, that if it's there and it's been assessed, we should be delivering on that. So my question is, do we actually hone in as an audit and risk? And I know there's a reference there to what is the role of the audit and risk. My question, again, is, do we hone in on these where we know that there is a huge risk to the council, to try and see how are we overcoming it, notwithstanding it's maybe not within our control in terms of the number of people that apply for jobs. And that's two examples I've given, and maybe refer to the SN and the other report.
So thanks, Councillor Scobie. I think Vlad will probably come in first on that, I think, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Scobie. Yeah, in terms of your points there, I think both of them allude to hopefully the point I was trying to allude to earlier, which is the workforce risk is intrinsically linked to the service failure risk, which also is a council-wide risk. And the points you've raised are towards that kind of service failure or inability to deliver some of those services that you're mentioning. And they are quite a lot of the council-wide risks are intrinsically linked to each other. And there's that kind of domino effect. If you don't have the workforce, you can't deliver the service. And absolutely acknowledge that. In terms of your next question is how do we hone in? It wouldn't be within the deep dive of this particular risk, I would suggest, because you wouldn't have the people around the table. I think the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee's got an option every year in terms of the scrutiny reviews that we carry out, and I would suggest that would be ideal for that sort of scrutiny and having the right people around the table in terms of that workshop.
Yeah, do you want to come back quickly, Councillor?
No, yeah, that would be a way forward into what Vlad has just suggested, because rather than honing in, we look at this as an overall and to think, especially when we're at the stage of just setting the budget. And setting the budget, what is our legal requirement? Have we got the ability to meet that legal requirement in terms of fixing the budget? And do we take cognizance of that when we are fixing the budget in terms of legal requirement and, as I said in here, statutory and other wise, in terms of moral responsibility? So yeah, I take the point, and if we could have that as an action, that we look at that in terms of the annual looking at it.
Yeah, so I think, that's sort of partly a rhetorical question, but acknowledging that we are taking that corporate look at this, but there's an action in terms of a scrutiny review, I think is what I'm picking up from that, potentially on the specifics.
Yeah, Chair, because I think, let's say, we haven't got the ability to hone in, but we can look at it in the round in general to see how do we look at this and how do we scrutinise or look at the risk that's associated with it.
Yeah, so I think we generally try and keep a kind of note, because this does come up in discussions where if there is an idea for a scrutiny review, it could be something that could be picked up like this and then carried forward when we look at what our next year's plan for that is. But I don't know if you want to add to that, Vlad.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's exactly it. So in terms of suggestions, we pick them up at both within committee suggestions and out with. We'll pick them up and we'll put that menu in front of members for that decision making in terms of that annual scrutiny process.
Thank you. And Councillor Barretti.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's an awful lot being said about the ability to deliver services, which is effectively what we're looking at, the risk strategy. There's one particular group of people that we are really desperately in need of, and that is the planning officers. And because of their speciality, they're not that easy to get. So at the moment, as most of us will know, workflow rate is under stress and potentially going to worsen. So where does this difficulty of attracting planning officers to our relatively attractive region, which I would say is actually should be brilliantly attractive or delightful region, where does it sit? And I know that James has talked about the homegrown aspect to it, but where's the emphasis? Are we going to spend more in trying to encourage homegrown, or are we really going to go after what may well be a very small pool of professionals to come into this area?
Thanks, Councillor Moretti. James?
Thanks. Through yourself, Chair. I think nationally there's obviously a shortage of planners right across the country. So it will be a very, very small pool that's currently there. So I think to answer your question, it's probably a bit of both. I think the grow your own model is something that we do in a lot of aspects within the council, and we should continue to do so. But obviously, it takes time for that to start and work through, so they come out with the relevant qualifications, experience, and the ability to do the role itself. But it's certainly an avenue to take. But again, it's about marketing the Dumfries and Galloway, what we offer that is there on the doorstep. So again, it is about that targeted recruitment with regards to that particular area. But as I say, I think it's a twin approach for me, where we do grow our own, plus where we can bring in external. But as I say, it is a national shortage. It's not just for Dumfries and Galloway.
Thank you. Councillor Barretti, is that an adequate response?
Yeah, I'd just like to briefly come back in there, Chair. I particularly liked James's comment on one of the other elected members, that we have this. When you approach the schools maybe don't understand or don't know that if they do homegrown, they've no student debt. And I thought that was particularly great, because I know an awful lot of people who have got student debt and they're not aware. So is that going to be, going forward, one of the avenues you're really going to push hard? Because again, if students go to university someone has to pay for it, and generally families end up also chipping in to make sure that their children do actually get what they need at university.
Thank you. James, can you help with that one?
Absolutely, we will promote that when we're out. Absolutely, I think it's a great model. I personally started at 16 as an apprentice, so and went to university after that. So I believe fully in that model. And I think it is about case studies as we move forward. I think it is about sharing those experiences that we know exist within the organisation to really sell the organisation. There's no better person or people to do it than our actual employees and workforce. So again, it's about sharing that good practice that currently happens within the organisation. As I say, there's alternative routes there for people, so if they so wish, and that in-work learning is a good way of doing that, and we will continue to promote that.
Thanks, James.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
You're welcome, Councillor Bretty. So, Councillor Katie Hagman.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. I'm just looking on page 37, and perhaps I should have maybe given a statement of connection at the start. As the Causal Resources spokesperson, my role covers workforce nationally, so if that can perhaps be noted as a statement of connection. And I know certainly I've been asked to give evidence to Parliamentary Committee on Workforce Planning, so I would encourage everyone to look at the work that the Parliamentary Committees are doing on this, the local government one. I'm looking on page 37 and it makes reference to recruiting staff. Now, I am also aware that a lot of our staff are perhaps part-time and there's a high proportion of low-paid work that women take up. Now, I came up at committee about when we were taking forward one of the new workforce policies, and I think there was a request from myself that when we're looking to recruit staff, is it possible to possibly even target women as to say, this is why we're a family-friendly, women-supporting organisation, whether it's our maternity policies, whether it's the new menstruation and the policy that was just passed at ENR in terms of menopause, etc. So has that work been continued? Because obviously, we want to reach as wide a pool as possible. And I know that there was a request via ENR for that to go forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hagman. James?
Absolutely, I can take that back and make sure, but I think that's all wrapped up in the benefits with regards to coming to work for Dumfries and Galloway Council. What we offer as an organisation, I think, is something that we need to shout about. So that benefits package, that recruitment package that gets put together must have those elements contained within it to make sure we do attract the right people, and we are an employer of choice, which is our aim as we move forward. So hopefully that sort of answers that question. But I'll take it back to colleagues as well. But absolutely, for me, it's about selling this organisation and the benefits that we bring through our policies and procedures.
Okay, thank you. And I'll give, I think, Councillor Dryber a last word, and then we'll go to the recommendations on this. Thank you.
Thanks very much. There was something I forgot to add in, a question I had in, James, at the start, and the importance of succession planning. But I think you mentioned something during the PDR approach and looking at the groups of potential skills coming together. But succession planning, our staff are of an age, in the main and average age, which we need to think about succession planning proactively, and it should be 2-3 years down the line that we should be thinking, rather than 3 months and this guy's going or this lady's going, so where are we?
Yeah, through yourself, Chair, I touched on them earlier, probably Councillor Dryber. The service people plans is something that, as I say, we'll have them at committee in March, but that's the detail, that's the succession planning, that's the age profile of that particular service. It's really getting right down to the nuts and bolts of that service for me through that service people plan. And contained within there as well, it's probably just worth adding to that, is a risk matrix for the service. So again, I think it allows that ability for that risk to be escalated where it then becomes that council-wide issue or looking for something to be resolved. So again, it's the finer detail will be contained within there that allows it to then shift up and down within the organisation. But the succession planning, absolutely, and I think we would be keen, it's about the conversations, having the open conversations about what the future is of some individuals within the organisation, it's sitting down through that check-in process, what are your aspirations in the next year, 2 years, 3 years? That's the open conversation that should be happening and will be happening through these interventions as we move forward.
Thanks, James, and thanks, Chair, for your leeway.
No worries, Vice Chair. With that, then we'll go to the recommendations. So we've received the presentation. Are we content to note the existing measures in place and planned actions? Thank you. And 2.3, I think we've considered quite roundly the implications of the workforce risk and council activities, and if we're happy to agree that we've considered, and also recognise that there will be a report, as James has alluded to ENR in terms of our workforce. So are we happy with that, members? Okay, thank you. So that takes us on to item 7, which is internal audit reports issued, contained within the reports pack, and we have Richard Fox here today, as well as I think Stephen Morgan and Sean Barrett and Lindsay Wilson will either be here or able to join us online, potentially, to address any issues. Richard, I don't know if you want to add anything to this in the first off before opening up to members.
No, thank you, Chair, but I'm very happy to take questions, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you. So over to members then. Councillor Drybrough.
Chair, are we taking one report at a time?
Yeah, let's do that. That's very structured. So do you have any questions on the first one?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Richard, again, I really like the way these reports are actually coming out now compared to what they used to be like, and I'm really good, happy about the action plans. This usual question, Richard, about resource availability to ensure these actions are covered, and the response from the departments, making sure that these things can happen, because we're talking a short period of time in some cases for these actions to be done.
Thank you, Chair. The first response to that is that this report was issued some time ago for the MITS one, so there's already been some progress made with this. You're quite right, there are resource issues which I'm sure Lindsay will be able to expand upon, but I know he's struggling at the moment for these issues, but he takes on a lot of these things himself. But I am reasonably confident that Lindsay will deliver on these actions in the timescales. Thank you.
Yeah, do you want to come back in, Councillor Drybrough?
It's just in that last comment, Lindsay takes on these actions himself. And there are a lot of actions. We get internal reports at each of the audit, risk and scrutiny committees, and if Lindsay takes on all these actions himself, that's a lot of actions for an individual. I'm sure you will give somebody else some actions to do, Lindsay.
So over to you, Lindsay.
Come in there, yes. I think just to echo what Richard really says, I think I know from both my services, peer employment and bill and order and payments, we are struggling with resources at the moment. The amount of throughput seems to be continually increasing, so there's a struggle. So I take it on board to try and take these actions and kind of take them by the scruff of the neck and give them a bit of shake and try and allocate them to the right persons. That's the way I operate. Don't worry, I don't physically shake people, but I just don't give up in these things, Chair. And I want these. I liaise very, very closely with Richard in terms of what the actions and what we're trying to achieve with some of these. And I like to think that we're trying to improve things, but it is. I'm not going to lie, it is difficult because there's so many kind of competing actions and just work that does sometimes get in the way. So it's just ensuring priority. But I thought very carefully about some of the time frames of these, and I think they are realistic. But obviously, I always say the proof of the pudding's in the eating. So in 6 months' time, when Richard reviews it, I'm prepared to get a row if I haven't done that. But I won't take that on lightly. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Lindsay. So on Appendix 1, we've also got Councillor Richard Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question relates to page 43 of the MIT's internal audit report. Just the last paragraph there says, during the audit, we identified a group of staff for whom overtime was guaranteed based on annualised working pattern, the overtime not requiring to be worked. Now, I understand that this report is historic, being July 2022, so progress will have been made, but I just wondered, is it a particular group of staff? Are they coming from a particular directorate? How much has been paid out to these staff? Has it legitimately been done so? And how many years has this been done for? Because it might accumulate to quite a sizable amount of money. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Marsh. So I don't know if it would be Richard to pick this up initially, because I think overtime has been a question over the years with this council in terms of how we're standardising across the departments. But Richard.
Thank you, Chair. The issue was picked up as part of a random sample of testing of timesheets when we asked for evidence in support of the overtime being worked, and we were told by management that in this particular case, even though the person was off on long-term sick, they were entitled to the overtime on the basis of an annualised working pattern. Now that is, as far as I'm aware, and also in contravention of the Financial Code. Now, as a result of that, I have done some limited data analytical review to try and establish if it affects other groups of staff within the council. As far as I can tell, that was an imperfect analytical review, but as far as I can tell, I haven't come across other cases. However, I've also raised an action for Human Resources to confirm with service managers directly that we are actually following the normal single status process. But the actual group of staff concerned, it is one group of staff which I won't name, but it is a relatively small number of staff within that group. So I hope it is an isolated practice, but that's where I'm hoping that our Human Resources colleagues will investigate further for me. Does that answer some of the questions?
Yeah, so is that sufficient for you at the moment, Councillor Marsh?
Yeah, it does. I hope, obviously, that's no longer continuing, that process of paying people overtime where no actual work has been done. I take it no longer happens.
That is correct for that group of staff, yes.
Okay, and Vlad, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just I think this probably demonstrates and evidences the importance of the internal audit function and the ability for us to pick up these anomalies. And I do say that with emphasis, because in my practice, in terms of what I've seen, as well in terms of other managers' practice, that's not the norm. So I can give that assurance. And it's these anomalies that through Richard's team we can pick up from time to time, address and ensure that more corporately, we're applying the policies correctly. And you've got that kind of assurance in terms of, for one, in terms of that lived example from the services that I've seen or practice, but also in terms of the analysis, that kind of top table analysis that Richard's has done, and the fact that we're looking at an action for HR in terms of comms within that, just to again remind managers of those duties.
Thanks for that additional assurance, Vlad. So I think that's the questions exhausted on Appendix 1. So if we move on to Appendix 2, we've got Councillor Andy Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. There's a couple of things here I have to say I'm a wee bit worried about, and it's kind of level of assurance and then what we're doing to put things right, and it's about self-directed support in principle. I'm looking here at the employment of relatives is well controlled. That's low. The expenditure is monitored to ensure it meets the care needs of the service user. Low. In actual fact, I actually think that should be the highest. But having said that, that's the audit opinion, to be fair. And the service user contributions are being paid. And again, it's a low audit opinion. A couple of satisfactories in there, and not applicable. I think really what I'm looking for here, Chair, is probably from the auditor. Some of the comments on the right-hand side of page 53, 52 onwards kind of give us most of the answers. But what's really worrying me is in 3 days' time or 2 days' time, we're going to sit and look at a social work overspend of 1.7 million. Yet the service user contributions are being paid. The assessment is low. They've taken a sample of 20 out of 800, which is out of that 28 were assessed to be required to make a contribution of care. Of these, 4 were being paid onto the card and 1 was being invoiced. In another case, it was not clear from the care package why a charge was due. There seems to be, I think what my worry here is that this is a significant part of the social work business. It was supposed to be a way, a cross-party way of taking things forward to make it better for the service users, i.e. the people who are receiving the service, so that they could be, if they wanted, be in control of their own destiny. And it doesn't seem as though it's been very well managed. And I think, commend Richard and his team, quite a small team now, Richard, I believe. The other question we'd be putting in here is, why has this not been reported to the Social Work Committee? Because this is a fundamental part of the social work budget. I suppose I'm really looking for assurances that we're taking this seriously, and they're looking at here, and the action plan is saying here September 24, June 24, September 24, and merchant categories should be tailored to individual care packages. Well, if my understanding of the system's right, merchant categories shouldn't be getting used unless they are tailored to the individual care practices. The management response is that as they disagree, this is not proportionate. The functionality will be used if needed. I don't understand that bit. Maybe that's a question for the Chief Social Work Officer on another day. And then finally, there should be a check to ensure that all contributions from service users are made. This should be at least quarterly. This kind of reminds me of time gone by when, in actual fact, that's exactly what it was. It was no less than quarterly. The management of these care packages were undertaken. And again, I think I'll bring it to a conclusion here. I think my other worry here is that resources have been taken from this team to bolster up another team, it looks like. It's maybe a sweeping statement, but again, I think I'll speak to the Chief Social Work Officer offline and just get some assurances on that. Maybe even just raise it on Thursday at the committee meeting. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Councillor Ferguson. There's quite a bit in there, but there is quite the list of actions as well. And why wait till Thursday? Because I think Stephen Morgan's on the line. But I mean, I think if I firstly go to Richard, if you want to pick up any of those comments from Councillor Ferguson, and then we'll invite Stephen Morgan to speak to some of the specifics. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll begin by just simply saying, obviously, I share your concerns because that's why the level of assurance is stated as it is within the report. The other assurance I can give to members is, as stated in the covering paper, we do a follow-up of these actions after 6 months, where members have the option as to whether to close a report or continue monitoring it. Certainly, there will be a report brought back on direct payments due in September committee to see what the update on that is, to provide you with added assurance. This report again was first issued for discussion in November, and there has been some progress on work to develop this. But equally, I think we've taken our eye off the ball slightly in terms of the monitoring arrangements, and I'm keen that they should be put back in place effectively to address those issues, if that helps.
No, thank you. And I think, I think we'd need to have that report back in September, given the nature of things we'd like to get that assurance on, given the report in front of us. But in terms of the specifics for the Chief Social Work Officer, Stephen Morgan, are you able to help Councillor Ferguson if you're on the call?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Sorry, I'm getting some echo where I am, so apologies for that. Yeah, in relation to some of the specific questions, what's important to note here is there are two different processes that run in parallel. One is the social work process in terms of the assessment of need and then how support will be delivered. And in this instance, is where people have chosen to employ their own staff through direct payments. So what the audit looked at was the monitoring process as opposed to the social work process. So what I can say is there are some additional safeguards, but what Richard and his team have found are some areas that are significantly concerning and ones that we are already addressing. I think it would be fair to say the most significant thing that changed in this period was the fact that our previously agreed monitoring arrangements did pause because of other work that the very small team within Sean's service had to go and rekey thousands of contracts, which would have been more of a significant loss to the council if we hadn't got those bits right. And what we've then seen is because of the lack of monitoring, which is now restarted, I can assure members of that started in January, we do have to improve some things. Just picking up on a couple of the specifics from Councillor Ferguson, the 1.7 million overspend that we're going to consider on Thursday is in the non-delegated space, whereas most of the activity in direct payments is in the delegated element to the Health and Social Care Partnership. So the two things, although slightly linked, are also separate. Councillor Ferguson also mentioned the prepaid cards that we use. Now, we obviously automatically block things like cash withdrawal, spending on certain activities, which I won't mention here. When we said we thought using some of the other controls there being disproportionate, that's because most people do buy what they're supposed to buy, and there's also meant to be a large degree of flexibility in the way that people meet their own needs through direct payments. So the balance that we have here is some of our own processes don't necessarily best reflect the intent of the legislation. So we are going to review our own processes and procedures and some of our contracts so that that better reflects, and then the outcome may well be different. In relation to relatives being paid for care, now this is quite an emotive issue, and it's one that really does change the relationship between the cared for person and their loved one. So we do treat this very seriously, and a senior manager within social work has to sign off when we're aware of these situations. But most of what was picked up in the audit was when we hadn't been told by family members that they had chosen to employ somebody. Now, ordinarily, we would have picked it up ourselves sooner with the monitoring being in place, but clearly we hadn't because there was a gap there. We've put that right now. So, we do look at that. Again, in relation to service users paying towards their own care, some people make a choice not to purchase the elements of care that they have to pay for, whether that's through direct payments or even if it was option 3 where the council would provide, for example, care at home. There are some other services that they might have to pay for and they choose not to. So when I mentioned at the start of what I said about two processes, we've got to take into account the social work process on one side and then the financial process that sits alongside it. And we've got to get the bits in the middle better than we currently have them. But I can assure members that Sean's team have put the monitoring back in place, and we welcome Richard and his team coming back to assist us with the monitoring as we move forward, and we're confident that we'll be in a much stronger position. What I can say, though, is that in terms of the expenditure overall, we continue to recoup unspent monies regularly, and that's one of the strengths here. So in relation to the public pound, overall, we're confident that we're in a reasonable position. I hope that's helpful. And apologies, Councillor Ferguson, if I didn't pick up on all of your points. I was jotting them down, and hopefully I've covered them.
Thanks very much, Stephen. So, Councillor Ferguson, is that appreciating the responses you've got so far, and that this will be monitoring this report again at this committee in future? Are you content with that just now, and I'll let other members in?
Yeah, pretty much, Stephen. Thank you, and Richard, thank you for your responses. It doesn't make good reading for the public, and then Richard backed that up. Stephen's admission that things could be much better, and they're actually taking steps towards making them better is reassuring for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Stephen, for your responses. You answered most of the questions that I actually had as well, and Andy for asking at those particular things. I think direct payment scheme, of course, is actually helping us in a load of different ways. I mean, we talked about the 3,000 plus hours earlier on that Arnie met, and direct payment scheme actually supports. Imagine what it'd be like if we didn't have that direct payment scheme. So, Stephen, I'm just again, it comes back to making sure the resources in place and covering that, because this is last year's report, and there is quite a bit of money involved in this. And of course, we keep on hearing, social work asking for more and more money for different reasons, and rightly so. But I just wanted to make sure that you're happy with the outcomes of the action plans, and you do have that full resource going forward.
Over to you, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dryborough, for the question. I'll address the last one first. In terms of the small team who help with the monitoring, on a day-to-day basis, if nothing else comes across their desk that they also have to deal with, then we can do the monitoring effectively. And if something significant happens, as did partway through this year, where they have to focus all of their attention elsewhere, then we really do struggle with the capacity to do this. But right now, I can assure members that, as the landscape currently is, we're confident that we will do the monitoring and that we will iron out what's here. In relation to the general resource question, as members are well aware, the demand on social work services, whether that be those social work services that sit in the delegated space with the Health and Social Care Partnership, which most of this is, or indeed what's coming to Social Work Committee in 2 days' time, there has been a tremendous increase in pressure, one because of the demographics of Dumfries and Galloway with an ageing population and fewer working age people, but also the impact of the pandemic. The various committees and the full council will have to make decisions around its expenditure moving forward, but money isn't the only issue. It's the people that we have to provide the services. So your point about direct payments being, a supportive way to meet some of that demand is absolutely right. But we still struggle for people to meet those needs in various, communities across Dumfries and Galloway. And that's why we have some family members stepping forward as well. So in short, yes, we have resources in place in terms of financially. Yes, there's an increase in those because of the demand, but the bigger issue is the people. So we do have to look at other ways of developing and delivering services such as telehealth care, digitalisation, etc. And the partnership are absolutely looking at that. And indeed, depending on the timings today, at 12 o'clock, I have a meeting with a couple of people from COSLA to look at some of the best examples across Scotland as to how we can look at meeting particularly older people's needs, utilising, a full range of supports, including human resource, digital resource, etc. So it is a very complex and rapidly changing picture, but right now I'm as confident as we can be.
Thank you, Stephen. And Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I don't want to compound Stephen's problems, but I think when I'm referring to the 3,000 plus, I think it's nearer the 4,000 that we're not meeting, and that's the demand on ageing population and so forth. So there is an issue there. I'm looking at page 54 in terms of there is a signed contract in place which provides clear rules, and that. I'm relating that to item 12 on page 56. Direct payment arrangements are terminated where agreements are not being complied with or the service user needs are not being met. by the arrangements. I'm looking at this in terms of the contract and whether the contract makes it clear who the employer is. And that they are covered, they follow the employment legislation in that respect, should anything happen as is referred to in item 12 there. That we do know when in the self-directed support that there is clear indication that the person then becomes the employer, and that is spelled out when they enter into that contract. It's just that clarification.
Yeah, thank you. So, Stephen, can you help Councillor Scobie with that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Scobie. Yes, the contract and the associated paperwork is quite clear that the person who's in receipt of the direct payment or their guardian or legal attorney are the people who become the employers. So the contract is between them and the people they employ, and the council's not party to that.
Yeah, okay. Do you just want to come back quickly there?
Yeah, I'm pleased to hear that because, does it cover everything, the person, holiday entitlement, so forth, and, that is all spelled out in the arrangements, the contract that is then offered to an individual who is employed by the person under self-directed support.
Yes.
There's so many ramifications in there, but I'm not getting into the lot.
Yeah.
All that is explained, yes.
Yeah, okay, so it should be made clear. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Stephen, and thanks, members. I think we'll go to the recommendations as I don't see any other people wishing to speak. So I think effectively we're asked to note, and obviously we have commented on the finalised internal audit reports and sought assurances from the relevant officers, with the understanding that I think there will be a report coming back in September about that particular Appendix 2. So we'll look forward to that on the back of the assurances that we've had. So are members happy to agree that and move on? Thank you. That takes us to item 8, which is Scrutiny Review, Children with Additional Support Needs, report by Head of Governance Assurance. We have Fraser Davis and Hugh Smith here to assist members with any questions. Anything you'd like to add at this point before I open it up?
Nothing from me, Chair, but happy to take questions.
So over to members. Councillor Dryborough.
There, I think this, Chair, I think this is a hugely important issue, children with additional support needs and what we do for them. I think it's important that the 43 members get the chance to look at this at full council on the 28th of March and look at the recommendations that the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee have suggested in emerging recommendations on page 66. So it's important that I think this goes forward to full council on the 28th of March, as is, Chair.
Thanks, Vice Chair. Any other questions from members? Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, I referred to earlier, and it's really just to ask that we are following the legal requirement in this, and when a child is assessed, as they're entitled to do, and there's schools that give a number of hours, that again should not be constrained by budgetary pressures, that we are able to deliver those hours to that child, and the risk that's associated with that if we do not deliver the assessed number of hours by the school. I think it's pertinent in so much as the reports that we've received at education give an indication that there are some 54% of schools that are under pressure in terms of the additional hours that are required in their school. So that's more than half our school estate. And it's really, that legal requirement that we are meeting that obligation, that we will meet the needs of the child as assessed. It's that risk that is associated that there could be legal action follow if they are not being met.
So I'll invite you to answer that, Hugh, but I'm just sort of wondering, does that is this where we get into what's adequate and efficient?
Thank you, Chair. In part, and the legislation is about individual children, and our statutory duties are in relation to individual children. And there is a statutory escalation process ultimately to the tribunal. And I have to say that in Dumfries and Galloway, we very rarely enter into that process. whereas colleagues across Scotland, other areas that see significant challenges in terms of decisions that get made, I think generally we've been able to find appropriate supports. In terms of funding and resources, we, as a council officer, we have to work within the budgets that are available to us, and that at times means that we have to compromise the provision and the capacity that we have. We work very closely with our head teachers and ask that our head teachers prioritise the need of our most vulnerable learners, and that's an ongoing process. But in terms of the risk is there is a process that can actually happen at any point, at any time, and it's not necessarily resource dependent. It can be very much about differences in assessment. But your point, Councillor Scobie, was particularly in relation to individual children where there's been an assessment. If we don't have the capacity and the resource, we would ask our schools to reprioritise, and we would also look across the piece to see if we can reprioritise resource.
Do you want to come back in, Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, I'm not too convinced in terms of, or confident in the response that we got. We're here referred to compromise the provision. Well, the provision has been assessed, and therefore I think there is a risk that we could end up in the tribunal, the Education First Tier Tribunal. Again, my understanding of the tribunal is that they have not heard very many cases, if any, because when it goes to that stage, it's referred back to the authority pursuing, where the case is pursued against them. For the issue to be resolved, and I think we, from recent communication I've received, then the council has been at the tribunal and it's been referred back on an individual case. Not wishing to deal with individual cases, but it's this idea of compromising. If we're compromising an assessed needs under budget constraint, then I think we do run the risk, and I'm not too clear if we've actually looked at that as a Scrutiny, Audit and Risk Committee. There is a serious risk in there for me, and the item 4.7 in terms of education has set up a group to look at this very issue. I think would indicate that there is a risk in here, and that should, it comes back to the legal requirement, and it should not be constrained by budgetary constraints.
So, there's a question there which I'm sure he'll pick up. But ultimately, this report is about what recommendations we're making to full council, and I think Councillor Driver has already highlighted that there's the two that are there do capture quite a lot in terms of ongoing provision and how we develop the service. But I think you're maybe being quite specific, so I'll let Hugh pick up on some of the specifics in your question.
Thank you, Chair. And your point to refer to adequate and efficient is important. There is no description in legislation or statutory code of practice as to what that individual support would be available. But I suppose what I would talk through, and maybe it might be helpful to share with members, would be the code of practice in relation to the tribunal. The tribunal is an escalated legal process, always, as in most legal processes, to try and resolve the situation at the earliest and lowest level. So sometimes references will be made to the tribunal by parents for many different reasons, and not simply about resources, about choices, about placements, and about appropriateness about placements. And we sometimes, as an authority, have to say our assessments, our professional view is that those resources or those placements are not the most appropriate ones. And then we would go into a mediation process, and the tribunal will often be involved in that. So I suppose that, Councillor Scobie, the point is that there is always a risk about any decision that we make, because we have a legislation which is incredibly empowering, rightly so, for parents in terms of to advocate and dispute with the educational authority in terms of what resources are available. We have a capacity. As the process that's been audited is very much looking at, is that we have a good process. The challenge is that we've not been able to address the rigour in terms of making sure that the resources, which are significant, are going to the right children, so that we can make sure that those children where we've assessed are actually getting that resource. Because at the moment, with 40% of our children identified with additional support need, we are really under the cosh, and that's not just in Dumfries and Galloway, that's across the piece. So I suppose that for me, what the audit process has highlighted, that our process is good, but the challenges that we have to face are about the recommendations and, as you say, the oversight group, which is very much about separating the identification of need to the meeting of needs, so that we will be able to report in terms of unmet need. It will be the first time we'll be able to provide that information to the Education Committee and whoever else needs to do that. But I can't sit here and say it ain't really challenging, because it is really challenging, and it's challenging everywhere. But I think that our head teachers and our staff and our learning assistants and all of our teachers are doing an amazing job with the resources that we're able to give them.
Yeah, so I think recommendation 1 is where we're trying to capture just developing that ongoing development of the capacity across the piece, so we've got the right skills in the right place and the right support for the staff who are in that field. But accepting that it's a very challenging situation, Councillor Scobie, is there a final point you want to make?
No, just and Hugh touched on it there. This is not a criticism of the staff. I think it's to the setting of the budget, and are we setting enough in the budget to meet all those challenges and demands that Hugh's outlined? And I don't get that from the report. I've got it from Hugh responding. So it's the challenge to us, not to staff. We've got to provide them with the resources and the tools to do the job. And that's what is, the whole risk that we discussed earlier. Then there is a risk to the council in terms of legal risk that we could end up in tribunals, if we cannot meet the needs of the child that has been assessed, notwithstanding what Hugh says in terms of how you try to mitigate that.
Okay, it's a fairly clear point you're making, but notwithstanding that, I think I don't think of any other speakers in on this as far as I can see. So if we go to recommendations, we're asked to consider the draft findings of the committee's Children with Additional Support Needs Scrutiny Review as reference. I think we've done that. Consider the emerging recommendations, and then finally agree to submit to the final report to full council at the meeting on the 28th of March. Members happy to agree recommendations? Yep, okay, thank you very much. That then takes us to item 9, which is Annual Report of Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee. We have Fraser here and Vlad also next to me to assist members with any questions. Is there anything either you would like to add to the report? Fraser.
Yeah, just very quickly, Chair, just a wee correction. Recommendation 2.1 should say to consider the work of the committee. The word consider is missing, so I do apologise.
No, that's fine. Thanks for that correction, Fraser. So over to members. Do we have any comments or considerations on the report? Okay, good report then. So we'll just go to recommendations. We have obviously, after reading the reports, felt that we don't need to consider in the full glare of public scrutiny any further, and I suppose we're being asked to, I suppose we've just considered them, eh? That'll do. Considered, okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for that. So item 10 is the Service and Area Committee reporting and scrutiny arrangements. Again, Fraser and Vlad are here to assist if members have any questions. So on item 10, are there any questions from members? Councillor Dryborough.
Not so much questions here, but an ask, if we can. I mean, this is about considering reports submitted to service and area committees relating to service plan performance reports. There's been a couple of times when those service committee reports have went to area committees and there has been no officers there from that respective department to answer any questions at area committees. And I just want to make sure that in the future that if we do have those service reports, and we've got to look at things in the future as well, that there are members of that department and senior members of that department in the building to ask the question, basically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's certainly we've experienced that in Annandale and Estill Area Committee, but I think that was picked up. But Vlad, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. Members might recall that we're carrying out the review of standing orders, and within that, there's an ask from members for us to look at the area committee element of it, and Councillor Driver's point has been noted within that. and how we best do that. Just cognizance of the practicalities as well, and potentially the option for obviously being more focused in terms of the themes, which would then allow for that proper discussion, similar to what we do here at Audit, Risk and Scrutiny in terms of the scrutiny papers, or in terms of the risk management element of it. Having the right people around the table to be able to answer that, I think, is really important. So we'll look at how best we do that moving forward, and there'll be hopefully either a seminar, or we'll go around the relevant political groups to feed into that and see how we improve that moving forward. But that'll be taken either just this side of the summer recess, or in essence after the summer recess in terms of decision making. But important that we have that dialogue and discussion with members before that point.
Okay, happy with that. Archie, you want to come back?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps a suggestion, rather, is going around political committees and having seminars, because we've got loads of seminars planned, and you know, time is of the importance. Perhaps an idea to go to area committees and have it as part of the agenda, because the area committee is here anyway, and just have it as part of the agenda to move forward that way as area committee.
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly, I think there's some merit in considering that, given that each area committee has its own distinct identity at times. But and certainly there might be a kind of horses for courses approach if that can be captured. But certainly worthy of consideration. I don't know what you would say to that, Vlad.
Yeah, happy to take that on board in terms of that overall project. So yeah, I think that's a valid point.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Katie Hagman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, I don't want to get mixed up with the work that Vlad just referenced there about the work of DORSO, and obviously this is looking at historically back to December 2023, but it's just really to highlight that, you know, we have got these statutory reports coming through, but they don't always necessarily go onto the forward planning. So I don't know, it's not captured in here whether all these statutory reports were put onto the forward plan in plenty time, but it's just one for consideration for going forward. But perhaps I'm mixing up the two reports, and that's something that can come out through the Standing Orders Committee work or the review of Standing Orders Committee that's ongoing. Thanks.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's worth picking up. It might have been something that's come through, I know Business Bureau looks at forward plan, for example, but is that something we can get that consistency across the piece about what's coming to area committees?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hagman. I think it's something we can note and take on board in terms of the overall improvements and efficiencies. What the assurance I would give is from the kind of forward planning perspective, certainly the governance team are always keen to get them in as soon as we can, and these asks go out to the relevant chief officers to ensure that any reports that are coming forward are noted and put into that forward plan. So that mechanism and the communications there is just trying to encourage obviously the officers to put them as early in advance as they can. Sometimes we know that there's more kind of urgent papers that arise that we couldn't have predicted, but in essence we'll take that on board, and we'll note that in terms of that particular piece of work.
Okay, thank you, Vlad. I don't see any other hands up. I think one observation I would make is that while we can see the lists there on page 91 onwards in terms of what reports have gone to area committee, so there's no doubt that evidences that reports have been published at area committees. In terms of does that lead to effective scrutiny and outcomes, all we know is that we see all the reports at area committees, but often there are comments about the timeliness of the report in terms of the reporting period, whether that's health and social care, for example, or indeed you might get a report that describes activity but not outcomes, particularly around education and PEF, I think, as a common feedback. So at 2.2, we're effectively being invited to agree the reporting and scrutiny evidence-effective arrangements are in place. I suppose that's always under review, which is why the piece of work's going through the review of standing orders subcommittee. So we might be agreeing that it's been reasonably effective but could be improved. I don't know if that would be fair, but I mean, I suppose I'm throwing it out there for members, but Councillor Scobie, you're almost winking at me there. But,
no, I think I've raised this a number of occasions. In standing orders, we're going to look at it as to the relevance of area committees in terms of the reports that they consider that are dated some 6 month year before. And it's to try and bring, and you did refer to earlier, the 4 area committees, there's characteristics in that they may be different in terms of what they're discussing, what they're deciding. But what generally happens is you'll get an education report to look at that's 6 months out of date, or social work, health and social care report, where it may not be relevant to the issues of the day in that area committee. And it's how do you make the areas committees more relevant to the activities and what's going on in their area.
Yeah, so I think it's maybe back to Councillor Dryborough's point about actually, well, why not let's ask each of the area committees as part of their agenda. But Councillor Dryborough?
So it's just coming back to your recommendation, Chair, and agree that the report and scrutiny arrangements evidence effective arrangements are in place across the Council, and that a review to look at improvement, if this can be made, is being undertaken.
Yeah. So, I think it's a helpful suggestion, given that I suppose we've already alluded to that piece of work that's ongoing just now, but if we're happy to agree that continuing improvement approach. Yeah. Okay, and I can't see any other speakers wanting to come in, so agreed, thank you. That takes us on then to item 11. So we have our annual governance statement for 2023-24. Fraser, Davis and Jackie Holland, I think, is available online to assist members if we have any questions. Members might be familiar with this type of report from numerous sort of incidents of it in service committees last year, but I think we're trying to consolidate that into this being the right forum to have that report. So Fraser, I don't know if you want to add to that before members come in.
No, thanks, Chair. No, that's right. We did take around service committees last year, obviously looking to amend the approach this year. We'll still engage with members in one way, shape or form, but it won't be done through committee or seminars or what have you. We'll work out an effective way of doing that. And also just to highlight that this is very much the working draft of the AGS. It is in development at the moment, so you will get a more final version later in the year.
Thanks, Fraser. Are there any comments on this, Councillor Dryborough?
Thanks, Chair. It's just coming to 3.3 on page 108, which is defining outcomes in terms of sustainable economic, social and particularly environmental benefits, because obviously we have signed that arrangement to be net zero by 2025. Difficult ask at the moment because of everything else that's happening. But I do like, and I'm sure Councillor Beretti will back me on this, because he always says Councillor Dryborough will back me on everything that he says with regards to environment, that we really need to truly focus on that. Importantly, the work of the cross-party working group and the officers group within the environmental part of that has got some really good information in there, and I would suggest that you look at that.
Thanks, Councillor Dryborough. I did notice a digital thumb coming up from Councillor Beretti there. So is that something we can take note of, Fraser?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. We'll look into that and add in that more detail.
Okay, any other comments or notes from members? In that case, I think, I suppose we can note that we're sort of pleased to see this in front of us, but obviously this is in development, as it were, and we'll see this back at the right forum at the right time. So thanks very much, members. That's item 11 done. Item 12 is any other business deemed urgent. I've not been notified of any urgent business. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for your contributions, members and staff alike, and of course our diligent IT support team, and wish you a pleasant rest of the day. Thank you.